It's the rundown. Another episode, another week, and what a week it has been for CSAA action and everything in between. Boys are getting ready for the state playoffs. Girls are getting ready for the CSAA tournament. There's a whole bunch of things, whole bunch of moving parts. But first, it's me, Joe, with Brandon. It's a good day. Brandon, how are you doing?
We're on the up and up. We've definitely had worse days and we've definitely had better days, but so far we are feeling the flow and especially off of the energy that was in Reed City last night for that boys CSAA tournament title game. Congrats to Coach Ingles, Coach Thomas on a really hard-fought win as the Cardinals protect last year's title, go back to back and beat Reed City in rivalry. It was just an excitement game there, but it was certainly great, and I'm still a little tired from it, but we're still hanging in there, man.
Yeah, that's true. That game was insane. I mean, especially board hopping and producing that game. I heard the excitement and the energy through just the mic that you had on, which was insane. But yeah, Big Rapids, big time win and getting the CSA tournament title once again. So I'm excited to see what next year is going to be because Big Rapids right now is what, 2 for 2 at this point?
2 for 2, keep her rolling.
Somebody's got to take down or got to get a new seat on or new person sitting on the throne. I don't know where I was going to go with that whole thing, but
You got
either
close
way,
enough.
we got a show to get to. So let's hop right into it. I mean, Brandon, what do you want to start with first? Kind of recap the boys CSA tournament or kind of go into state playoffs? What do you think?
I think we can start the CSA tournament, and then we can gradually move up and then get into the girls' side as well, which is going to be very interesting.
For sure. So let's
All
get, I
right,
mean, you were
so
there.
see it.
Yeah, I was going to say you were there. So you tell us what happened.
For sure, yeah. CSAA tournament, so quarterfinal round. Obviously, a lot of excitement for Big Rapids against White Cloud. And those that watched this game, those that followed along with this game, those that saw this game in person, they would all agree that this was White Cloud's game for 28 out of the 32 minutes. They dominated this game. It felt like at times they were up double digits at one point in the fourth quarter. They just had all the momentum in the world offensively. They were doing such a great job moving without the basketball, getting open looks. But that defense the Cardinals used in the fourth quarter, that trap hybrid pressure, especially in the final couple minutes, to get some big time shots to fall from Canale, from Jenga. I mean, it was a huge comeback effort. They end up forcing overtime. They get the win 53-48 in overtime, beating three-seeded White Cloud. And that's a really good White Cloud team. And do not get it twisted, the fact they were not CSA champs this year. They're going to be a force to reckon with in their district, but we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. And for those curious, Grant did get the revenge on the road against White Cloud in that third place game, which we'll get to as well here in a little bit. But also on the other side, that led to Reed City being paired with Big Rapids. Reed City getting the win against the Grant Tigers in dominating fashion as well. Reed City did not have Max Hammond in that game, and especially for last night's game, Max was unavailable as well. Rumor has it he's recovering from mono, so hopefully he heals up well and soon. But Reed City didn't need him on Monday night. They take down Grant 60-41, and especially for Grant, they really had a lot of the momentum going into that game. It felt like, despite that loss against White Cloud, especially the fact looking back at that game to potential revenge tour back at Reed City after losing at home earlier on in December. And Grant was a better team, arguably, in the second half of the season than they were in the first, just based off of numbers and what you saw on film. But especially for what Reed City was able to do that night, it looked dominant. They didn't get as many shots to drop in that game against Big Rapids, and I think the biggest thing, winning the board battle in the fourth quarter, was absolutely crucial for Big Rapids and those big guys down low. Gabe Jenga, Ty Gilchek. Now, I know Ty had at least 12 rebounds in that game. We'll get the final stats here in the upcoming hours from Coach Thomas, as well as I think Gabe Jenga was also nearing that double-digit mark in rebounds, which is a huge, huge boost for him. I think that was really a show-out game for him. Just overall great play. He made a lot of tough buckets, especially down the stretch, led with 16 points. But Reed City, they're going to be a good club, especially going into district play as well. And especially when you got Marcos Sadat Real, who has just been dominating down low. He had, I believe, 10 points or 9 points in that first half of play. He was on pace for that 18-20 mark that he had in the first time around. Then he was limited. A lot of extra attention on him in the second half, which really helped Big Rapids slow down the tempo, especially being able to really increase that lead in the fourth quarter. And especially when you looked at Landon Jackson, he had a lot of good looks. Some of them just didn't drop. Spencer Hansen as well. So it'll be very interesting when you put all these teams now on a very, very neutral court that Manistee is. It's a very different kind of atmosphere. It reminds me a lot of White Cloud's gym, just in the way that it's structured with a walking track around, kind of short-sided stands on each side. It's going to be packed in there, and it's going to be really fun. But CSAA tournament, I mean, it had all the marbles on the table, and we got a rivalry to settle it, and it certainly lived up to the hype that we were expecting. And I mean, it was just an incredible game start to finish, and Big Rapids just able to get on top and get that revenge tour for their second in a row.
Yeah, that was big time. And I think too, like the storybook of it was insane. How Big Rapids and Reed City play each other at the start of the year. People were like, we need this game a second time because that one ended, in some big time theatrics. Then going into this one, obviously with that rivalry, it was pretty sick and a very good storybook ending to see that end that way. And then Big Rapids going on top, making it 2-for-2 is a sight to see. But you mentioned Manistee already, so I think we're going to go into the boys district. Right now, it's all set. All the brackets are up and going and ready to go. Brandon has an article as well on WBRN.com that you can check out that kind of previews everything. But we're going to go a little bit more in depth on this whole business. And I think we'll probably we won't even keep it just CSAA. We'll probably go in depth with the teams around the area as well. How about that? Or how does that sound, Brandon?
Hey, 2 thumbs up, Joe. Let's do it.
Sounds good. So we'll start with Division One. I'll probably let you take over this one, Brandon, and then we'll just kind of just go down the list of what's going to happen.
Yeah, of course. So Division One, obviously the Cadillac Vikings, a team that beat Big Rapids and Reed City this year. Obviously, moving up to Division One seems like has not flustered this group, especially under Coach Besenberg. I mean, they've looked unstoppable all year long. Dominant win against Big Rapids, dominant win against Reed City, both by 20+ points. I mean, they look like a force to be reckoned with. In a first-round matchup, Bay City Western, Midland Dow winner in that semifinal. I mean, just based off of what it looks like for this team in their bracket, I mean, we're going to be looking at Cadillac being a potential regional final contender in their first year in D1. That's just how good of a program this is. And it's crazy to see that for a team moving up in such short amount of time. But in reality, that's what it looks like it's going to be. So they wrap up against Gaylord actually tonight as we're recording this on Thursday. So they're at Gaylord to finish out their Big North conference slate, which they've already clinched it with a 9-0 record currently. Can be 10-0 if they're able to take care of Gaylord, who's 4-5 on the year in that conference play. But especially when you look at District 2, I mean, you're looking at their potential biggest threat and opponent is going to be Mount Pleasant Public. So right now, you look at that team, they're 12-9, and they're a team, I believe, earlier on this year that has been beat by some comparable opponents to Cadillac. So right now, Cadillac might be looking at an easy road to District 2 and into the regional, which then on there, they could be considered a favorite. It's crazy to think, but that Viking crew, even though they only got 8 players that play standard minutes, they got the right guys, and they play the right scheme, and they will run you out of the gym, and they could be running their way towards a district title and even a regional contention in their first year in D1.
Yeah, it's a combination of both. Both a really good team, but also just a little bit weaker of a district that's just going to kind of culminate into really the perfect storm for them to really just make a run. But it's up to them. I mean, they're 17-2. They're no strangers to winning. I think they'll probably keep this going. I won't say chalk it up for a district championship, but they are definitely the favorites going into that district final. District 35, we're going to move down to Division 2 right now. Start off with Big Rapids and Reed City are both in District 35. Reed City has the bye going into this one. Big Rapids is going to have to take on host Manistee. Big Rapids 14-6, Manistee 10-10. I'm liking Big Rapids' chances right now, to be honest.
Yes, if you're a Big Rapids fan, you are liking this matchup against Manistee. And especially when you look earlier on this season, as I pull up my notes here, Manistee, they've only averaged about 50 points a game offensively, which is definitely a plus for Big Rapids, as a lot of the games that they have fell in games where they have turned in by other teams' offensive prowess, aka Whitehall, aka Cadillac, TC West, all these teams that have predominance on the offensive end of the basketball court. So when you look at Manistee, they're especially comparable with a couple of teams. Their NPR has hovered right around the 510, 520, 530 marks at points this year. They're 10-10. That doesn't mean necessarily that they're a slouch of a basketball team. I mean, I think they're pretty comparable to a team like Newaygo. They can be really testy. I would say they're not necessarily as offensively predominant as Newaygo is, but they are better defensively than Newaygo is in that sense. But they like to play a lot of close games, and none closer than one they actually just played in, ironically, earlier on I believe it was on Tuesday against Montague. It was a 32-27 basketball game. So if you're looking for a high-scoring game, I mean, Manistee might be thinking the absolute opposite of what you're thinking. So don't bet on black in that case. You might want to put the chips on red for this one. But they can still put up points. Last comparable team they played in CSAA actually was Tri-County. They put up 71 on the Vikings. So that was probably their most dominant performance, I remember as I'm looking. Yeah, their most dominant point-scoring output of the whole season. They beat the two lower seeds in district play, that being Mason County Central and Hart earlier on in the regular season. So they're going to be a really testy team. But when you look at them as far as everything that they do, they want to slow you down. They want to play a little bit slower. And for Big Rapids over the last couple games, they've benefited off of that. And I think the firepower shooting the basketball, I think Big Rapids, if they can shoot at the level that they've been over the last couple of games and even higher up towards that higher potential they can show, they're going to have no problem with Manistee. But it's going to be at Manistee, so that's going to be probably the toughest part of this journey, playing at their place against a home crowd, because they're going to absolutely fill that place to try to see if they can help will their team to a potential district title.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like we said, also in District 35, Reed City is going to be taking on the winner of Hart and Mason County Central. Fun fact, Hart and Mason County Central play tonight as we are recording this Thursday. So they got a little precursor of what it's going to be for that round one matchup. Hart is 10-10, Mason County Central 8-12. I think there's really not much to say about this one. I mean, you don't want to look past this game if you're Reed City, but I think you can just say, like, if you just play your game, I mean, Reed City's probably just going to be able to chalk this one up as a W.
Yeah, and we can look into the comparable scores and so on and so forth on, oh, well, they ended up beating Mason, or they ended up beating or losing to Manistee by 10, even though Hart lost by 12. They're better. Well, you can do all this stuff, but in the reality, what happens tonight especially, and I think this is the biggest point that I'll bring across with this game, is what we see tonight will not be what we see on Monday night. There is 100% guarantee that these coaches are hiding their playbooks going into this game. I have no doubt about it, as one that has seen a lot of these districts go over the last couple of years, especially back in the time I played when we used to play against Benzie Central. We'd play against Cadillac later on in the regular season just to play them again in district play. You knew they would, a lot of their stuff, especially later on in their playbook, that sheet would be shut and it would be covered until you get to district play. So these teams are going to probably play a lot of the regular season script book. They're going to play their game that they have all season, but just based on what they've shown, they're going to probably maybe throw in a couple wrinkles, but you're not going to see the prototypical playbook that you see in postseason play. They'll probably change some things up, but both of these teams especially, it's going to be very curious to see which one kind of gives forth. Hart wants to play more offensively. Mason County Central thrives more kind of in those defensive games, so what tempo will be slowed down? I think that would be the determining factor, but they're going to need to make a lot of shots, and they're going to have to be really, really testy on the boards to be able to take down Reed City, whoever wins that game going into the semifinal matchup.
Yeah, for sure, Brando. And then especially going to District 36, Chip Hills is going to be taking on Clare. That one's going to be hosted by Gladwin. That's going to be going on Wednesday, February 28th. This one's going to be a tough test for Chip Hills. They've had some games early where they've played pretty solid. They've kind of not played upset because some of the games were ending up in losses, but they played solid against teams like Big Rapids. They played pretty solid in these past couple weeks of the last parts of the regular season. They've already played Clare already this season. So we're going to see how it plays out in this matchup, but they only lost that game 42-54. So not a blowout by any means. That's maybe a few possessions going the other way, and they're going to be pretty solid. And not to mention, Chip Hills is a team really with nothing to lose right now. They're just going to be playing like it's, backs against the wall. It's a fresh start, fresh slate. Everybody's 0-0. in the playoffs, and especially for right now. Claire is a team that's got a little bit more expectations going into this one. Chip Hills, they're expected to go out first round, so I think you're going to see a light get or a fire get lit. I can't even talk right now, Brandon. You're going to see a fire get lit up underneath Chip Hills to kind of really maybe pull off the upset against Claire.
Yeah, I look into this matchup and it's very intriguing because it's at neutral site, which obviously gives neither team an advantage per se. As far as that is concerned, you can always kind of consider a 3 or 4 point kind of neutralized advantage for a team that might be lower in ranking being at home. You can kind of look at those averages and like a 3, 4 point difference. But especially for Claire, I mean, they're not necessarily a team that like stands out in any category. They're a very good fundamental team. They always have athletes on that squad. They do again this year. And I think especially for what Coach Shunk has done with that group, I mean, they've played contested against a lot of good teams. They beat Shepherd earlier on this year, a team that Big Rapids lost to in their season opener. They did play Chip Hills on the road in Remus earlier this year. They got a 12-point win. So Claire's going to be the favorite going into this game. There's no doubt about that. But for Chip Hills, I mean, Jordan Hansen had a really good night earlier on this week. And I think especially when you look at him, Gage Sadov's really been kind of heating up over the last couple of games. So when you look at that, I think there's going to be a very interesting opportunity for how well they get against Newaygo. And then obviously Kent City kind of fell off a little bit. But if they can bounce back, and especially with a little bit of that rest time, considering that this is going to be a semifinal game, I mean, that's going to be a huge benefit for Chip Hills. But it'll be very interesting to see. I'll be curious to see what Chip Hills tries to run defensively, as they are very accustomed to man-to-man. They showed a little bit of zone against Big Rapids early on in that matchup, but Claire is a team that likes to mix defenses. They really like to throw half-court traps at you historically, so that'll be something. How does Chip Hills really take that pressure, as Big Rapids was able to force some turnovers on some pressure as well, full court, half court. So that's going to be a big thing, how they do with turnovers. If Claire turns them over, they should win this one by double digits, and they're moving on to compete for a district trophy.
Yeah, I think that's an astute observation for you, Brandon. District 40, Central Montcalm and Saginaw Swan Valley are going to be taking on two incredibly evenly matched teams. Central Montcalm is 7-12. Saginaw Valley just one more loss at 7-13. I'm not sure who's going to win this one. I'm obviously kind of biased more towards CSA with Central Montcalm, but they're a team that did pretty solid against Kent City with a 55-52 OT win in the first round of that CSA crossover, but they're fresh off of a 42-point loss to Newaygo. So you definitely know that they're going to really try to, I would say, avenge that loss against Newaygo, just get a nice solid startup against Saginaw Swan Valley, but they got a chance tomorrow night with a makeup game against Midland Calvary Baptist, kind of get on the right track, get another W in the column before it starts up for postseason. I'm going to go Central Montcalm for this one, but I think you're going to see an instant classic over there in Alma.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. And when you look at that bracket overall, I think there's certainly a case to be made that, especially being hosted at Alma, that you'd consider the Panthers kind of in the front running in that one, but also Shepherd could make some noise, as well as Midland Bullet Creek will have a really good chance. The Lancers have had a really good bounce back year, so I think those will be kind of the three teams to consider. And unfortunately for these two teams, obviously not being a part of those other three, but I think when you look at this matchup, I think it's going to be very intriguing. You look at the NPRs, Central Montcalm, I believe, at 469, and then you have Saginaw Swan Valley at 496. So you'd consider that Saginaw Swan Valley would be the favorite in this game. They've played a little bit more competitive competition as far as strength of schedule, just based on observation. But I think it'll be a very intriguing matchup between these two teams, especially looking at Saginaw Swan Valley. They like to score the basketball. They've done it quite often this year. When they've been held defensively has where they've really kind of fell off against really good powerhouse teams. Frankenmuth, for example, Bay City, John Glenn, Freeland, a lot of those powerhouse programs there on the east side. When they get slowed down offensively is where they kind of sputter a little bit, because their tendency to give up right around that 50, 48 to 62 point range is if they can score higher than that to win the basketball game. So if Central Montcalm can slow them down defensively, they'll have a shot. But I think if Central Montcalm is going to try to truss it into a track meet of a 60 to 60 affair, then it's going to be the Vikings for taking.
Yeah, defense is definitely going to be in play for Central Montcalm. Next one up is going to be Tri-County and Newaygo Conference opponents taking each other on in Fremont for District 41. Newaygo, like I said, fresh off that win against Central Montcalm, a 42-point heater. But Tri-County just looking for just some type of spark to get started, and why not now for the Vikings? So we'll see how this one plays out. I think, though, you got to give it to Newaygo from what you've seen so far. I mean, especially against Big Rapids, they took them to a pretty solid play to get in, or I mean, Big Rapids was able to take them the distance, able to get into the CSAA playoff. Newaygo, they're hurting from that. I think you could see, and especially with now that trio of Nelson Long and Klump were just three guys who were just lighting it up. So I think you're going to see some solid offense being shown. I mean, 82 points is a pretty solid offensive showing from the Lions, and Tri County is a team that's kind of been struggling against those offensive heavy teams. So we'll see how that plays out. But Newaygo, I think you're going to have to give the W in this one. What are your thoughts, Brandon?
Yeah, I think especially when you look at that first matchup, Newaygo looks very revenge minded after falling out of the top four of the CSAA in that loss to Big Rapids, because since then they put a thumping on their next two opponents. So I think that's definitely considering them to be one of those teams you're gonna want to watch in this district 41. I think it'll be very interesting. On the other side, unfortunately, you look at the records. And I think this would kind of be maybe should we spoil the half court shots yet? Should we wait on that? I'm not sure. What do you think, Joe?
We'll wait. We'll wait for that at the end. We'll wait for that at the end.
Okay. I'll wait for that one for the end though, because I have it on the other game on the other side of this bracket. But I think Newaygo has the advantage against Tri County. Obviously, you saw the Lions get the regular season advantage. The Vikings have been playing better over the last couple of weeks compared to where they slumped really in the middle of the campaign. After the first week, they kind of went downhill in a hurry. But I think when you look at the way they've played better. I don't think it's enough to take down Newaygo. I'd agree with you there, Joe. I think that will be a very interesting game. And I think for a lot of people, obviously the storybook writers would want to see them play Grant once again, M37 rivalry there in the district semifinal. How fun would that be?
Yeah, that would be sick. I would love to see that. But Tri County does have one more game against Morley Stanwood until the district kind of gets going. I think they play tonight or tomorrow. Yeah, tonight they play in Tri County. So we'll see how that one plays out. This District 41 is just filled with, I think this is, I don't know if you can say talent wise, it's the best team or the best district, but it's obviously the one that has the most like interesting playouts. And also just with so many CSA teams in this district, I mean, you can't ask for anything better. So I think District 41's got to be my favorite one so far. But also on the next part of the bracket for District 41, Kent City versus Fremont. Kent City is going to be taking on the host school, the former CSA opponents. I'm interested to see how this one plays out because Kent City's been a team that's been playing pretty solid, but obviously, kind of a team that's more middle of the pack when it came to the CSAA.
For sure. I'm glad you made that observation, Go, because I think you're absolutely right. District 41 is the most intriguing on the docket because you have a 14-win Grant team, you have another 14-win Sparta team, then you have Fremont, you have Newaygo also there on the doorstep, and Newaygo's a 14-win team, obviously. Fremont is not an 8-win, or is not a 14-win team. There's nights they play like a 14-win team. They really have it going some nights. They might be in my half-court shot. I'll reveal that later. I will say that I think they get past Kent City in round one. I'll leave it at that for now. But I think this one will be very interesting, especially hosting at Fremont. I think will make it more interesting. That's a hard gym to play in. It's a lot of shots you got to make in that gym, especially on those rims. So it's going to be very interesting to find out. But I do agree. This one will definitely be the one I think a lot of the community has just the eye out for on, oh, hey, what's going on over there? Because that one looked very interesting because there's a lot of intrigue. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And the Zoom meeting has about 10 minutes left, so we're going to have to kind of pick it up. So we apologize if you're waiting for the team to get a very in-depth look. But next, we're going to go Grant. They take on the winner of Tri-County Newaygo. We talked about it. We think that's probably going to be a Grant-Newaygo matchup. That M37 rivalry is one that, I mean, is one of the best in the CSA if you think about it. I mean, it's Grant and Newaygo, and then Big Rapids and Reed City are the two rivalries that you think of. But Grant is a team that, I mean, was playing pretty solid. I mean, they got the loss in the first round of the CSA tournament. But I mean, they're looking for something to maybe go for a little bit bigger fish to fry with this district semifinal game.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting for sure. Grant if they can get that offense rolling and get some stops later on in the second half, I mean, they're going to be a team that can be a district favorite, especially in District 41, because Coach Scheidema's group, they always can score the basketball, and those teams tentatively over the past portions of history have done well in tournament play. So it definitely has all the right reasons pointing at Grant potentially being a favorite there in Fremont in district play here next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And then especially the next game, we'll kind of go into these Division 3 matchups. We'll kind of still focus on some CSAA teams here. Lakeview versus Morley Stanwood in District 72. I don't know who's going to take this one, Brandon. I think these are two teams who are just ready for this fresh start of district play and are just looking to make a new name for themselves. I mean, Morley Stanwood has been a team who's taken some good teams the distance, but just have not been able to get over the hump of it. And Lakeview kind of in the same boat. So these two teams ready to rock for this district play.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting, especially being at Morley. The Mohawks going to have an advantage there. District 72 is one that will be interesting just because of the fact Lakeview and Morley Stanwood playing in round one. Neither of these teams have anything to lose because everybody's going to count them out, especially with their win totals. But that first game is going to be a lot of intrigue. We obviously look for the 18-2 teams playing against each other in the district finals every year. But how about the 2-18 teams when they have to play in round one? There's as much intrigue there as you can imagine with the other two teams. So I think it's still going to be a good game. Don't be surprised. Morley Stanwood wins at home by a couple points in that first round. Don't be surprised.
I'm looking forward to that one as well. White Cloud is going to be taking on the winner of Hesperia and Ravenna. That's the District 74 semifinal. I think White Cloud, this is their district to lose. I think you could say they're a team that, I mean, you hate to keep saying it and like say these teams are just ready for like the fresh start or they're ready just to avenge some late regular season losses. But White Cloud's a team who is just almost there for the CSAA championship, but their team now 16 wins. 4 losses. They've been on quite a heater to start off the season. I mean, had a little bit of a fall off, but I still think you're going to see a really, really solid District 74 play out where White Cloud's going to be raising the trophy at the end of it.
Boy, I hope so. They're going to have a little bit of a tough test, though, with North Muskegon also in there. They played North Muskegon earlier on this year. They did lose to them, but now being on a hybrid, or I should say a neutral floor there in Hesperia might be just the difference because obviously they had to play North Muskegon at their place early this season. But White Cloud especially, I'll be rooting for them. I think Coach Jones and what they've done a fantastic job really just bringing the program out of the ashes. You've seen the great play from the Robinson brothers, and they can shoot the basketball. There was no doubt about it. We saw that on Monday, and especially early on in the first meeting when these two teams played last year at Big Rapids. This year's first game at White Cloud, we really didn't see the full White Cloud team that we saw last Monday, but I think it's going to be a really fun matchup. And as much as there is intrigue with Ravenna and Hesperia and then the Holton and Shelby first round matchups, this is going to be round two of North Muskegon, White Cloud. This one, you might be just enough for me to put the mortgage on it. Can't say it very often, but this one just might be it.
We'll see. We'll see. That's it for kind of what we can expect for the playoffs for the boys. For districts coming up, some teams got one game left, so we'll see how that plays out next week. We'll just be talking about round one, kind of the recap of that. Let's hop in. We got 5 minutes left in this whole thing, so we got to make this quick. We'll hop over. We got a little bit left of the CSAA regular season for the girls' side. Right now, Morley Stanwood sits at the top of the conference, tied with Grant at 8-1. Kent City and Reed City both 7-2, sitting 3-4 respectively. And then you also got Big Rapids, who is in the hunt at 6-3. So this last week of play, where some teams might have one game left in the CSA, some teams might have two. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. It is not set in stone just yet. But Brandon, what you thinking so far?
Yeah, right now the top four seem to be pretty much locked in, and I don't think there's really, I'm mathematically trying to do it here on the fly. I'm not sure if there's a true chance Big Rapids gets in. Now they do have a little bit of an advantage with, with a close NPR at 544. Obviously Reed City there at 570. Kent City, they're a little bit out farther ahead than I think that they would much rather like to admit. But I think when you look at the matchup, I think right now the best case for Big Rapids is they would need to get a win against Tri-County, and they would probably need, I don't know if Kent City losing to Lakeview would be enough for them to get in. They would probably need Reed City to lose in their game tonight, or excuse me, on Friday, which doesn't look as likely. So right now, I think Big Rapids, a long shot, but You never know if there is an upset, especially like it is this close to March. There could be a chance, but right now, I think the four that we have will be the four that we're talking about next week in CSA tournament action, and I think it's going to be a very interesting tournament for sure.
Yeah, the 1% thing that could happen is what's going to let Big Rapids get in, but 99% is kind of locked in for what we might see. But you never say never. You never know what can happen. March Madness is always throwing wrenches and stuff like that. So that's what it is right now. Morley, Grant, Kansas City, and Reed City. It looks like that's going to be your four for the CSA tournament on the girls' side. So interestingly enough, we got 3 minutes left. I think it's time for our half-court shots.
Ooh, half court shots. Okay.
You can start, Brandon. You take it over.
I'm ready for it. I alluded it earlier. We obviously are talking about District 41 earlier on. I think we see a matchup of Grant and the Fremont Packers in that district title matchup. And I think when you look at this Fremont Packers team, they're obviously 8-12 on the year. Not a great record. But they are, when we watched them, especially when they played Big Rapids, they gave them all they could handle. A lot of these teams, they've played really well this year. And they even gave Whitehall a run at their place early on this season. They're going to be on their home floor where they've notoriously made these kind of runs where they're not the favorite or they're a contender, but not necessarily the sure-picked, unanimous champion. I think that they will win in round one. They upset Sparta in round two in the semifinals, and they will battle Grant to the final wire, and I think it'll be within 5 points in that district title game. There might be Grant on top, but don't even be surprised if Fremont runs the table because they tend to do those things in their gym, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again.
I respect that. I respect that call. That's a nice one. I kind of have two, but the one is in District 41. I think you could see an upset Kent City beating Fremont to take it on with Sparta. I think you could see it Kent City. I don't know. I just got a feeling. And you don't gotta say it. It's just unfiltered. That's my prediction. Kent City is gonna make it past round one. The other one, I'm taking. I think you're gonna have to look at District 35. I think, especially with Big Rapids and Reed City in the situation that they're in, I think you could see another rematch of these two guys, of these two teams in the final bracket. So I'm hoping that it happens because it'd be pretty sick. But it just kind of depends how the whole thing plays out. But Big Rapids and Reed City, I think, storybook ending for that district championship will be pretty insane.
Thank you, early Christmas, for coming 9 months early. That's all I'd have to say with that. But before we go as well, big shout out. You guys will hear it later on. Reed City and Big Rapids games will be broadcasted next week. Stay tuned for more information, full coverage. So that Friday game might be even more electric than you could imagine. Stay tuned.
Yeah, that would kind of be insane. We'll see how that plays out. I think it's going to be on Big Country this time, right?
TBD. Figuring that all out right now.
We will see.
But stick on Big Rapids Daily News, and you will find out for sure here in the next coming days, in early next week.
Absolutely. That's going to be it for this episode of The Rundown. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate all y'all for giving it, this time out of your day for watching this one. It's me, Joe, Brandon, signing off. We'll be back next week.
Peace.